Thanks for joining us on the program, everyone. Our attention is turned to New York, where the 80th United Nations General Assembly is currently holding, and it's been anything but quiet. U.S. President Donald Trump returned to the UN stage the first time in his second term in office, scolding leaders over immigration, dismissing climate change as what he called the greatest con job ever, and also threatening new tariffs on Russia while urging Europe to step it up. His speech has now drawn sharp reactions across the world from allies, rivals, and especially from countries pushing for multilateral reforms. Meanwhile, Nigeria is looking to make its own mark. Vice President Kashim Shettima, representing President Tinubu, is expected to deliver Nigeria's address as the country renews its lobby for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Last year, recall that Nigeria called for fairer global governance, urgent climate financing, and debt reforms. This year, they say the stakes are even higher as Africa demands a stronger voice on the global stage. We've also seen the Vice President attend certain high-level meetings, including with the Gates Foundation, pushing Nigeria's development priorities, amongst others. We have some updates from there, especially from U.S. President Trump's speech yesterday.
World leaders converge on New York to deliberate on issues threatening peace, stability, and global cooperation. At the opening session on Monday, UN Secretary-General sounded the alarm that persistent violence in conflict zone is undermining regional stability and eroding global trust.
And record heat raging through climate chaos. And at the same time, we are moving towards a multipolar world. But without strong multilateral institutions, multipolarity has its risks.
In Tuesday's plenary, attention turned to the Gaza war, with more than 68,000 people killed and over 100,000 injured. Many leaders insisted that the two-state solution remains the only viable path to peace.
The terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas are indefensible from any angle, but nothing, absolutely nothing, justifies the ongoing genocide in Gaza.
About 150 nations voted in support of the two-state solution. Attention downshifted to the U.S. president's stance. But rather than joining the call, President Trump came out gun-blazing, criticizing the UN for enabling unchecked migration and the Europe for being misled by what he called the climate change campaign.
And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know,
Gaza, President Trump warned that recognizing Palestine as a state would, in his view, amount to rewarding terrorism rather than addressing its root causes.
They have taken so much. This could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now.
The speeches today may have taken different tones, but what stood out today was a speech by U.S. President Donald Trump, who insisted that countries from around the world review his immigration and his climate change policies. In the coming days, it will be clear whether other world leaders align with his sentiment or push back against them. Asuko James, TVC News, New York.
Joining me now to help unpack these developments is Professor Joy Ezelo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, United Nations Independent Expert in Sudan, former UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons. She's also founder of WACOL and Tamasak, former Dean of Law at the University of Nigeria. Prof, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. We're seeing an unprecedented speech here from the U.S. President, unusually blunt language, telling other leaders your countries are going to hell, while championing what seems hardline immigration measures. From your perspective as an international law expert, What do you make of this speech and the tone? How does it impact on UN norms as we know it and the UN's ability to convene consensus in this regard?
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, the 80th section of United Nations General Assembly is on, and Trump has delivered a speech which many are taking seriously now. Because if you recall, in 2018, I think soon after he came into office, when he delivered his first speech, there was a lot of laughter in the room. Indeed. You don't see that same laughter. You see people knowing again what has happened within this short period. He assumed the presidency of the most powerful country in the world, as he also bragged, which is true, that they've learned to take him seriously. Because think of it, some of the decisions that they've made, economic decisions, tariffs, is impacting the entire world. So when he talks, however, you may not agree with him, and definitely there is a lot of point for disagreement, but yet they will take it seriously because they now know that is where this world leader is taking us. And a country that maybe used to be at the forefront of human rights, doing so many other things, climate change, of course, with the change of regime from Democratic Party to Republican, you see a totally different change in policies. And then he talked about issues. For him, is domestic, is American first, and he's still on that American first agenda. So we must understand it from that perspective of international diplomacy, that American first, and that is his foreign policy. And he's following passionately on that foreign policy. And he had challenged the world. United Nations, of course, is the Committee of Nations, and every country is a member. That is, they have full recognition. And that means that multilateralism is what United Nations is promoting. And United Nations can be as strong as the member states want them to be. And of course, you see even the policies of not paying. United Nations is facing. There are a number of issues that are up for the 80th UNGA. Issues around climate change, around, in fact, first of all, the peace and global security in the world, because there is so much conflict, especially conflicts that started in 2022, Russian conflict, Israel, Hamas, Gaza conflict, 2023, October, the Sudan conflict. And it pains me as an African, and I'm also one of the 3 UN experts, independent international fact-finding mission on Sudan, or for United Nations, that Sudan didn't even feature. That also is a reflection of where Africa is in the geo-world politics. Indeed. And then the world order or disorder. And we have to be concerned as Africans. This is a conflict that has displaced more than 12 million people. This is a conflict where tens of thousands of people have been killed. This is a conflict that over 24 million people are facing acute famine, humanitarian crisis between SAF and Sudanese Armed Forces and RSF, Rapid Support Forces and all the other militia. Just a few days back on 19th, 75 people who were worshipping in mosque were massacred. Civilian population has become the casualty. No protection. It's also a war on women's body, because if you look at number of sexual violence, yet it's not mentioned. What does it tell us? And as we think of the demand, even for permanent seat by Nigeria or by other African countries, it then means it's time that Africa will have to advocate and take its rightful place in the world stage. Also, President Trump's speech challenged not just Africa, but I think it's mostly on developing countries. Because if we have good governance, if we can fix our countries, probably ordinarily people wouldn't want to migrate. It's a fact of human nature. I've served as UN Special Rapporteur on human trafficking and the intersection. So of course, migration is a marker of globalization. And then America used to push this globalization. Hence, they have all this very non-restrictive immigration policy in the past. But this has changed to restrictive migration policy. And you can see also, as the world economic, the crisis in the world is exacerbated because the war is taking its toll. The war in Europe, the Ukraine war, the fact that NATO have been asked to also they have to all contribute to NATO. The percentage moved from 2 to 5. Everybody is cutting on aid. And as they are cutting on aid, they are increasing budget on defense. And these are aids that African countries rely a lot on.
And perhaps
effectiveness.
Perhaps you know, a lot of things are happening so fast, unprecedented. And the question will be how the African continent should react. You mentioned that Trump is walking the talk. He's defended mass deportation, is urging other states to also tighten their borders. But what practical remedies should African governments and Nigeria specifically consider to protect human rights of migrants while also safeguarding national security? Some are saying, like you mentioned, that we need to look back, look inside. Do you think our quest for a permanent seat is really the solution here?
It is important. I support that quest because you know what? Because even these 5 permanent members, they are holding also the rest of the world to ransom. Sometimes nothing gets passed. Everything just, you find quagmire. They are just caught up in the logjam. So we need to break that. We need to have more people, more countries. Africa is there, 55 countries. We deserve a seat, permanent, at least 2. And then you can have 5 more on rotational basis. And every part of the world, region of the world, should be represented. That's way they can have greater say in the Security Council decision that end to be the uppermost echelon in the structural architecture of United Nations. I think is important. We should continue in that quest. But beyond that quest, honestly, the whole of Africa, and now I want to particularize even to West Africa, we can do a lot. We have since run an open border system. We have also seen that has not worked the way it's desired because that has become a route for trafficking, that has become a route for smuggling of illicit weapons, small arms, human trafficking. That we have seen also that even in terms of air transportation and travel, it has not opened up. So you can have, open border and the benefits. We are not really seeing it and reaping it the way it can contribute to powerful regional economic growth that can reduce youth unemployment, that can reduce inequalities and can create opportunities for everyone to thrive. Because if you have livelihood sustainability, nobody will want to migrate. You have to look at push and pull factors. You have to look at those push and pull factors that exacerbate this irregular migration. And if not, if people are okay, then nothing. I recall also when I was a dean, we had a lot of applications from around the world. Some of them, my students, I taught, they had PhD doing well. We employed them, over 20. Today, if you go back, those people that had returned to Nigeria then, in order to serve, because then they've all gone back again. So so we need to address the pressing needs for sustainable development in Africa, so that it will be South-South collaboration within the West African border. You can even see Ghana having restrictive migration for Nigerians, even beginning to what we had before. Ghana must go now. It's happening how many years? Nigerians are being the one being asked to go. This is not a good situation. You go to Mali, you see our girls. You go to Italy, you see them in thousands. Within West African regions that are very poorer countries, you will see them there. What are they doing? So we need to ensure that in fact, what Trump has challenged Africa is that every leader should think in the best interest of their country. Because what he's doing is that he's thinking in the best interest of America. And he said they don't need the open border. They don't need criminals to come to their country. They don't need people to bring drugs and get them. So he's thinking in the best interest, national interest of America. And he's not claiming to be a global leader. He's telling us America first. And that's it.
As we've seen recently, the U.S. has changed visa reciprocity for Nigeria. The administration has also tampered with the H-1B visa fee, which used to be less than $300. It's now $100,000 per year.
$100,000.
We'll talk more about that
$100,000
in a minute, Prof. Let's go on a short break and then we'll return. Stay with us, everyone. Thank you for staying with us, everyone. Prof, thank you for standing by as well. The conversation has arrived as to the fact that Nigeria is intensifying its campaign for a permanent security council seat. We expect perhaps the vice president will also mention that when he kickstarts his speech later on today. But practically, would that seat help Nigeria protect its national interests? Or like critics say, like some critics say, that it probably would just saddle Abuja with more responsibilities and obligations that may outstrip its current capacity. They're saying Nigerians, our leaders should come back home, focus on the problems, you know, the economic issues. Don't burden yourself with all of these international brouhaha. What do you think?
I think it runs, it shouldn't be exclusive, it runs parallel. The global impact on the national and the local, and then the world has become a global village. If you also have a strategic position globally, you're likely to negotiate better trade, you're likely to negotiate even this migration policy better with other countries. So, but let's look at it this way. In getting our priorities right, honestly, looking at our population, we are the largest black nation on earth. Looking at our population, looking at even our landmass, looking at the strategic position, everyone in four African is a Nigerian. We deserve that permanent seat. There is no other country that we deserve it, and we have to claim it as of right. So keeping that aside, we also remember when Nigeria led ECOMOG, Nigeria already is overburdened with the problem of ECOWAS countries. Whether you like it or not, they are still helping like the big brother to other West African countries. So if they are there, it's already what they are doing. So, but what I can say is that it will give us more respect. Because sometimes, look at history. If you look at what Nigeria invested for peace in West African region, for ECOWAS, and for ECOMOG, and Nigerians that died. And today, if Sierra Leone, if Nigeria is coming to contest a seat, Sierra Leone will also come. And they will say it's equality of vote. They will they will not even differ. If Nigeria come out, Liberia will come out. They will not. So we did not. Our foreign policy was badly tooled, and we haven't really had, it's almost like a foreign policy on a shoestring. We have to really re-strategize on what is our foreign policy. We have to be able to conquer hearts and minds of even these our neighboring countries, because they don't even give us that regard and respect given the investment we have made in their countries. And that's why we must get it right. And always there is this saying, if Nigeria gets it right, the rest of Africa will be stronger. And it's really like a God-given role to us. So we have to, I support the quest for permanent seat for Nigeria. We should not give up. But again, this time and the trajectory and the crossroad that the world is in now, and the global peace and security issues, including climate crisis, it is a time for introspection. It is a time for us to have a solid roadmap. Think home, think Nigeria first, and then prioritize development of our country. Prioritize knowing the population we have, especially the huge youth population. And that's really important, because if we do that, and emphasize things that matters to them. Education. I'm glad that under this government we now have even a scholarship bursary opportunities for young people. It is important. That is foundation. But there is still need to be a lot of things that would be done to make it attractive, to attract and not lose, and have the brain drain that we are currently having. So the quest can go parallel with our quest for sustainable development locally. There is nothing wrong. If we are in that global stage, honestly, it's going to also enhance a lot of opportunities for us. So we shouldn't just criticize that quest just for the purpose of criticizing it. We have to know that it's not contradictory for our own quest for development. In fact, it might propel us, because it will challenge us. If we are there and we have a permanent seat and people look back and say, all the people with permanent seat are in the moon, they've gone to Mars, they've gone to, so what is Nigeria doing? Then it means we have to do that space quest. This is also an age of AI, and AI governance is also on the table of the discussion in terms of framework that UN is trying to fashion. So then we have to, leapfrog development in the country so that it will match our current status. And we'll be in a position, Prof, because people will also be lobbying us.
I'm wondering how you see issues like climate change evolve after President Trump's speech. We've seen him significantly cut aid in some of the programs that have come here to Africa. Yesterday, he dismissed climate science, calling it the biggest con job ever. And we saw him promote fossil fuel purchases. For African countries like Nigeria that face severe climate impacts, but also require energy for development, what diplomatic strategies do you see here and legal arguments that should be deployed at forums like UNGA to protect adaptation and transfer commitments?
I think adaptation, the important thing is also, you know, how many member states that the United Nations has. And I think if a census is taken, and you will see many people are for climate, also climate change. But for us in Africa, what I want, and even for me as a Nigerian, is climate justice. Because, you know, we are not the one causing this, and then we are the ones that are most vulnerable by this fossil fuel use, climate. We need to now mitigate, and we don't have even the resources to be able to deal with that. And we see that those that have probably used coal in the past to generate energy have opted out of it, and they are trying to restore also renewable, to have renewable energy and to also restore. But now also we are challenged, and with this kind of, if we are getting a misreaction from people that we depend on from the north of the world, then you can see people saying, do we now go back to coal again fully and rely on it? Or do we also move on to what is a sustainable, renewable energy? I think the science is there, and we cannot dismiss the science of it. But for developed countries, you know, they can afford to take any position.
Absolutely.
So we must always think home. Because it's they can afford to take any, are they out of power? Are they lacking energy? So they can afford to take any position. Because what we see in climate justice is that we are asking the rich to pay their fair share, and then also use it to swap even debt burdens of African countries in terms of, and then that way we can also, we can mitigate our own, climate challenges and what. So they are running away from that payment they should be making to other less developed countries that are suffering from it. So it's a matter of also.
We have to go now. We have just about 2 more minutes to go, but I want to get your thought on what you make of how efficient the UN is and how relevant it is in 2025. You heard everything President Trump said. He said he saved them about 7 wars. 157 UN members have now recognized Palestine states. Quite a number of them did that this week. But that hasn't really changed anything when it comes to peace and resolution of the crisis in the Middle East. How relevant is the UN? Do you think it needs to also evolve, with the times?
There is no doubt that UN needs to evolve, and they are doing that, and they've been, tinkering with the architecture, the structure, and even, given the current financial funding situation. But let me tell you, as someone who is also very familiar with the work of the UN, when I even look at situations, take Sudan, for example, even the humanitarian aid that is coming, even the people who are able to do the work and that can get that kind of immunity that UN gives to tell people what is going on. Without that platform of United Nations, the world will be worse for it. And you remember again, the UN is as strong as the member states want it to be. Remember, these are the member states that make up United Nations. And they are the ones. And when you look at Security Council, and that's why we're talking about expansion of this, to have more voices and to have inclusion and more voices in making decisions that will be for the greater good and greater happiness of a greater number of members of United Nations.
Professor Joy Ngozezelo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, UN Independent Expert on Sudan, and former UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking and Persons, thank you so much for talking to us on the program this evening.
Thank you.
And that's our show today. Remember, you can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Okuntoye.